Welcome to the enLIGHTenUP podcast. I'm Lisa Watson and will be joined by my co-hosts Nicole FROLICK and Brian Koenigberg. The enLIGHTenUP podcast is a weekly show that provides an unconventional and refreshing spin on spirituality, where three friends and weekly guests share informative, fun, and usually off-the-wall conversations. Unlike others, we provide fringe and skeptical viewpoints on all topics, because our experience has taught us that the echo chamber is a boring place from which to learn. So regardless of where you are in your spiritual journey, we can promise you're going to find a place to fit in here. So we invite you to grab a drink and listen in on our casual, entertaining, and hopefully enlightening conversation. And enLIGHTenUP is a self-funded podcast, so if you would like to help us to continue to be able to produce, enhance, and expand the show for our audience, then please send your support using the link in the show notes, or go to our website, enlightenup.us, and check out our merchandise shop, where you can purchase merchandise that will allow you to express some spiritual humor. You may also show your support by leaving us a review on iTunes and following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you all so much for listening and supporting us, and now let's jump right into the episode.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the enLIGHTenUP podcast and Happy New Year to you all. It is now officially 2020, the year of perfect vision, and Lisa and Brian and I are here today to discuss some of the big changes that happened in 2019 and also what we're feeling is coming through for 2020. Brian, you had a really big year, a very transformational year. You are now clay, as you say.
Well, definitely the last month. Definitely the last month I've started changing a lot and looking inward more, but you guys have slowly been eroding away at my persona, and
I don't
maybe
know
just
if we'd use the word eroding.
wearing down on me. I have to say one thing before we go too much further. This is very important. Today, we are recording this podcast on December 28th, and I just have to say one thing: Go Tigers!
Oh my gosh. Someone's an LSU fan. He's very excited today.
I apologize for anyone who was wearing earbuds during that.
Well, we can duck it and make it not as loud, but I just had to say that. I don't know, this working with Jessica, living with somebody that works with Jessica, being around, we've had a house guest, almost continuously for 2 months who works with Jess.
Working on her website and all the material that goes into it.
The things that you talk about, Nicole, it's all the same. It's all looking at yourself, finding the shadows, the idea of manifestation, being in control of your own destiny, all these things that we have been talking about for years on the podcast. And the idea of me as a skeptic, and I think about that word and what it means, and it's probably not the right word, because it's and maybe this is what skeptic means. I just wasn't ready to hear it. I've been reading some books lately. I just when I say read books, I guess I'm kind of doing air quotes around the word read books, because I use this app called Blinkist, which takes a lot of books and writes it into something that you can read the entire book. They basically paraphrase the entire book so you can read it in about 15 to 20 minutes.
Summary of a book.
Yeah, it's like a summary of a book. But I've actually read the blanks of books that I know well, and they do a pretty good job. Anyway, Deepak Chopra apparently just came out with a new book called Meta Human, and I just read through that. And I remember when I was previously married, my ex-wife was into, I might come as a surprise given what she's putting me through, but she's theoretically into personal development and spirituality. I know, right?
Well, we all learn at our own pace.
Yeah, hashtag fail. And so I remember seeing, I know who Deepak Chopra is, and seeing his books and not being at all remotely interested in picking something up, or the idea of personal development, is haha, I don't need that. So the word skeptic, and I kind of, think of Michael as well, it's being a skeptic on this show, I think, was more me not being open or ready to hear the message, and reflecting that what we're all programmed with. We all mostly grew up with the same programs in terms of what society wants us to believe and think and feel, because that's why we're all the same until you break free from those chains of that programming. We're all the same, and we have conditioned responses.
Well, it's interesting because you, at the beginning, like when we were talking, when we brought about, being programmed and all that kind of stuff, and you were like, "Oh, I'm not programmed," and
Right.
it's interesting, right? Because it's so subtle, it's so hard for people who have never really just like looked into it or opened their minds to the idea of it, and it always seems like it's just such a completely nefarious thing, but it's not necessarily a nefarious thing. I mean, it can be, but it's so subtle in just the way we're conditioned. And so how do you look at that now versus what you used to look at like that idea of programming?
Well, when we first talked about it, when it was first introduced to me, and I think it's just the way the words were first heard by me, and I don't make the distinction between how it was said by you two and how it was heard by me. I heard computer program. I heard that we were computers and that we were in a simulation. And that was a hang up. I don't, and I still don't see it as that, but that's how I took it at the time, is that, oh, we're just in a computer and, somebody's playing a video game with us and we're the Sims. And the more I've read and come to understand, the idea of what programming is, it's just, our beliefs, what we come to hear over and over and over and over again, as we're kids and we're living in a house and we continually hear our parents say, we can't afford that, money doesn't grow on trees, whatever the message is that you grow up learning. As an adult, that's how you look at that thing. And brainwashing is probably a better word than programming, but it's how we're conditioned. And just coming to understand it more, I've definitely had to, because I didn't buy into it right away, and I really had to come to an understanding, and it finally clicked. And it wasn't you guys, and it wasn't Jessica. It was the book that I literally picked up.
It was a combination.
10 days ago, maybe. I started reading, or I read, The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. And he said everything you guys talk about, everything Jessica talks about, but it made sense. It was written in a way that somebody like me could really understand it and break it down, and it was digestible, and it was like, oh,
It spoke your language.
It really did. It really did. And I immediately the next day, the whole essence of the book is wake up an hour earlier and change your life. Change your life by adding an hour to your day. Wake up an hour earlier and do 6 things, like 10 minutes each. And I said, Lisa, I think you're going to love it. And she read it and she's like, wow, this is great. Because I think a lot of us in our lives have like, oh, I'm going to try this one thing. I need to read more, so I'm just going to try to read more. And it's hard. You do it for a while, and then you fail. Or I want to do this a little. And he takes like 6 of these things that are incredibly impactful for your life's journey: meditation, saying affirmations, visualization, exercising, reading, and writing. And just doing each of them 10 minutes. So it's 6 things, 10 minutes, an hour. And wow.
But it's also the mindset of setting your intention when you go to bed, setting your intention when you wake up, and knowing that you're approaching your whole day based off of that intention.
But really even understanding, and I know you guys have said this, and I know Jessica has actually said it to me. He says it in the book. And it's still kind of a mind fuck, and you don't have to believe it. That's actually the hardest thing to understand, that you don't have to believe something. You just have to do something. And
well, that just speaks to that whole idea of like programming, right? Like you're reprogramming yourself through this miracle morning mind stuff that you're doing, like 6 things a morning over an hour. You're literally reprogramming yourself.
That's a really interesting thing you just said, because that's how the program got into your mind. You didn't believe it when you were a kid. You just did it. It was done to you.
Minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
It was just this thing that you experienced and that you didn't buy into, and then it became your program. Wow, Nicole, that's really mind opening. That it really helps me understand why you don't have to believe it, because you're gonna keep saying it. You're gonna keep saying those affirmations, or doing these things, and it's going to change you.
It's how all of our limiting beliefs were programmed into us.
Mm-hmm.
Taking away
repetition.
Just our parents said it, society showed it to us, television showed it to us, our teachers showed it to us, whatever those little things were, even about age and growing old and getting sick and not being capable of doing something. You can't fly, you can't do this, you can't do that. And over time we just literally believe it. Or speaking light language when you're a small child and being told that's not a language, that doesn't make any sense, this is how you speak. And just over time, we buy into that stuff.
And this idea, Brian, of you hearing all of this information from different people, Lisa, myself, Jessica, maybe guests on the show,
Mm-hmm.
other people around us, hearing the same information, but it was a book that really spoke to you. And that happens all the time where, it's happened to me. I know it's happened to Lisa, where there's things that you just, you kind of get it, you kind of understand it, but then all of a sudden it comes to you in a message in one way, and it just anchors in, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, the light bulb is fully on. You get it. It's makes complete sense. And sometimes it requires hearing it. Like they say that even in marketing, like there's 7 points of touch or interaction before anyone is willing to even buy something, I mean, if you think about it in the mind of, were you willing to buy that kind of idea? And you had to hear it from different points. And then all of a sudden it shows up in a format. Likely, a lot of times it's the least threatening format, in a sense of where it feels like it's, I'm not saying that you felt us pushing stuff on you, but it came into your reality through your own volition of not even knowing it was kind of coming in, like not even knowing what you were going to expect. And it just kind of comes in, and it's just like, boop, falls in your lap. And it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah, I wasn't you guys didn't make me. It's like, oh, Brian, seriously, this is good. You need to do this. And it's, well, that's ego, pushing back and saying, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this on my own.
And you got it from someone that you met who's completely outside of our circle.
And I didn't take it that way. He just said, oh, I love this book. And I was like, oh, I'll check it out. You know,
Right.
he didn't say you need to read this book. It'll, because it'll change your life and it's going to give you meaning and you're going to understand everything that you've been talking about on your podcast. There's no reason I should have read the book other than he recommended another book and I loved it. So I was like, oh, he recommended this book. So I was like, I'll check it out. Why not?
And I think also, Brian, you have opened yourself up to asking questions, which I know is part of what Jessica has worked on you with, as well as myself and the stuff that Nicole and I talk about, and just asking your higher self to guide you and asking your higher self to lead you to where it is that most need to go. And how do I let go of these limiting beliefs that I have that I'm not even aware of? I don't even know what they are. And you've been asking yourself those questions. And so for a book to show up for you, to me, makes perfect sense because you got to a point where you were open for it. You allowed it and you asked it to come.
I'll tell you, I think the biggest reason it is working for me and it resonates with me, the thing that I have struggled with the most, and this includes like when we've had a guest or there's some sort of homework for me, or all the different things that Jessica would talk about and coach about, and it's like, okay, you need to do this and you need to do this, and it's like this laundry list of things is too overwhelming. Like you have to do all of these things, and it's like, how am I supposed to find the time to to detach myself from this and draw back my energy and to say this kind of thing and to think this kind of thing? And it's like and it was like, who has time to do this? And then the book was just like this short little game plan. It's like, it doesn't have to be hard. And at the very end of the book says, if you have a really busy day, you can break this whole thing down into 6 minutes. It's like, do a minute each. Because it's just about showing up for yourself. And you guys have said that so often. It's like, if you give yourself 6 minutes a day of personal improvement, that's better than 0 minutes a day. And that's showing up for yourself.
Absolutely.
Yep, showing up. And the fact that you're doing it first thing in the morning, you're showing up for yourself first thing, like before anything else in the day. That has like a profoundly stronger impact on your programming than if you were to do it, in the afternoon or before you go to bed. Like,
Exactly.
Instead of making you a middle of the day priority or a last day priority, you're making yourself number one. I know that when I started learning the breath of life a few years ago, and I was told to be doing that and to make it the first thing I do every morning, it's very similar to what you guys are doing with this miracle thing. And it's so important. It totally shifts your energy when you do something for yourself immediately in the day. It really channels so much more in and making yourself not just a priority. When you make yourself a priority, you're saying to yourself, I'm worth it. I'm worth being number one in this life. Like I'm not something that needs to be on the back burner. I'm not someone who may get something or may not. Like you're really speaking to your own self-worth when you show up first thing in the morning for yourself.
Yeah, and there's obviously something to that, and that's why he wrote the book the way that he did, and he talks about it in the book because stuff comes up, life happens, and if you try to schedule it at any other time, there's a really good chance something's going to come up and you're going to forget to do it. I mean, it happens all the time in day-to-day life, and this is the only thing that I have to be doing at this time. So literally cannot screw it up.
And the ego is really tricky when it comes to sabotaging you and, tapping in to those old behaviors, those old programs come up that find a way to keep you from showing up for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, to me, it's a way of saying, no, I matter, and I'm going to give this gift to myself first thing every day to show myself that I matter. And having consistency and discipline is really the key. And when you think of anyone who's successful at anything they do, say an Olympic athlete or a CEO of a company or whatever, a startup, they don't let anything get in their way. They have a plan and they stick to it. And everyone else, the family, the friends, everything fall by the wayside. If you're a Olympic athlete and you have to go train for 6 hours a day, you go train for 6 hours a day, and you don't make excuses and say, oh, it's okay because my mother's here and, she wants to spend time with me or blah, blah, blah. You just do it.
Yeah, I think I'm waking up before my ego because I love to sleep. So I think waking up early, my ego's still sleeping.
Okay, I'm curious, Brian. Have you found or observed any increase in like energy or what you're able to do in a day, or just what you're giving to people or giving to yourself because you're doing this in the morning? Have you found like any kind of shift throughout the day of like how you're showing up in other ways? Like, I don't know.
I definitely have more energy. I'm not necessarily using that energy for anything. I mean, we still work from home, but I don't feel as tired, like mid-afternoon, 3:00 comes around and you feel tired. I don't feel tired. I just, feel tired when it's later in the day.
It's also been the week of Christmas, and his family's here, his brother's here visiting, and so schedules are a little off. So I think it's, because you just started doing this about a week or 10 days ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, not even week and a half.
It's hard to quite say yet.
It's new, but I immediately notice body changes, just working out every single day. And it's really small things, I mean, I did 100 push-ups this morning, and when I started, I think I was doing 60 push-ups. So just within a week, I'm able to do 100 push-ups, which is, I mean, that's a big change, but it's not surprising, if you do, if I assume the mental aspect of my body is changing as much as the physical part of my body with these exercises, then yeah, I'm changing by leaps and bounds.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're like even talking to your inner child and higher self now. Like that wasn't happening at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and that, I mean, and that started, when was Jessica here? Right around my birthday. So end of October, Jessica came to stay with us for a weekend, and it's so interesting living with two life coaches, because like I said, Frank, who we've had on as a guest a couple of times, he's been staying with us for about 2 months, and he's just been staying with us in our guest room. And there's a lot of coaching towards Brian, just because Brian apparently needs it. And when we sit around the table, it's usually coaching directed at me, so I have no choice but to absorb it. And then when Jess goes here, there were 3 life coaches all coaching me like 24 hours a day, it seemed.
You have the trifecta.
I did. So I had no choice. It's either, just ignore everybody or, enjoy it. And I enjoyed it. But we were sitting around, I think it must have been dinner, and Jessica was we were talking about the inner child, and, obviously what Lisa's been going through, and, she bought herself, teddy bears, and I bought her, a teddy bear, and it's, working with her inner child. And she said something that sunk in. I think I talked about it on one podcast. But I went upstairs, and
she got a little tough with you. She finally said enough of this, and she just kind of let you have it.
But so I just, I went upstairs and imagined that my inner child was an actual child locked in a closet, because that was the analogy I think she used, is your inner child is this thing that's been locked away. And if you look at it that way, this part of me has been ignored, locked in a dark closet for 30 or more years. And that's a long time. And if you look at it as a real being, that's horrible. I mean, we would all call that, abuse. And then I also at the same time imagined that small child locked in the closet was my estranged daughter. And that made it even more real. And I think that's what allowed me to really sit with it. I stood outside, I closed the door to the closet, and I just stood outside, and I imagined I had a conversation with Kaya vis-a-vis my inner child. And it was really impactful. And I still do. And I don't remember. It's one of for me, it's still so new. I don't remember, and I hate using the word remember because maybe I should use the word remember because I still am not intentional about it. And maybe I should add that to 10 days in the morning as talking to my inner child. But I don't remember. I don't remember. And sometimes I'm lying in bed and I have a hard time falling asleep, and then I'll have a convert. I was like, oh, I forgot to, like, oh shit, fuck, I locked you back in the closet again. And I'll say something, and it's so fascinating to me. And it kind of shows me how real the inner child and the higher self are, because I was lying in bed a couple weeks ago, and I don't see something like, I imagine, if you're talking with your inner child, you can probably touch it and see it. And I was lying in bed, and I just kind of looked over towards where the closet would be. It's dark, and I just kind of like sensed, something being there. And I just had a conversation. I was like, oh, did you want to talk? And when I ask questions, immediate answers, just like if you were talking with somebody else, an immediate answer. And so as I'm having this back and forth with my inner child, I was sleepy, and I kind of dozed off. And then something happened, and it woke me up, and I was just completely wide awake again. I was like, well, shit, now I got to try to fall asleep again. And so I said, oh, are you still there? Inner child, are you still there? Do you want to talk? And there was no reply. Before there was a reply, and here there was no reply. And then I said, oh, well, let's see who else wants to talk. And I said, hey, ego. And then before I finished that 3-letter word, I was like, no, I don't want to talk to you. And I was like, so higher self, do you want to talk? And I immediately heard this, yeah, let's talk. And so I asked some questions to my higher self, and it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating that it's you, but you can have a conversation with a part of you, and it's not the same as I am known. I always have for my entire adult life, as long as I can remember, talk to myself, but not in this way. It's just more, I do better at thinking thoughts when they're out loud. So I'll just talk to myself. And this is different. This is having a conversation. This is not just saying something so you can hear it with your ears. It's completely in my mind because Lisa's sleeping, and having a conversation and having an answer. You're asking I don't want to say a weird question, but you're asking a question that you don't have time to think about the answer. And I was like, oh, here's the answer.
Do you want to share that conversation you
Not
had
really.
with your inner child?
No,
Okay.
I don't remember it. I don't remember what I talked with my inner child about. It's not important.
But, well, no, don't say it's not important.
No, it's important for me to remember right now.
So with your higher self, how I realized I was talking to my higher self, because that came through for me when I was 31 and I was in Costa Rica doing my little sabbatical and starting yoga and all that. And my higher self started speaking to me while I was doing yoga. And I realized it was my higher self because the voice that came through, and it's really hard to say because it wasn't an audible voice. It's not like I'm hearing it with my ears. It's still in my mind. It's very telepathic, but there's still like a tone there. It's really hard to explain. You feel the tone, you feel all of that. And this tone came in with a lot more authority of knowing without being pushy or egotistical. And there was a lot of compassion and kindness behind the voice. That's how I knew it wasn't me, because I was not being compassionate and kind to myself for those first 31 years of my life. And so that's how I was able to discern, oh, this has got to be my higher self, because this is not the way I would talk to myself. And there was just this deep inner knowing or wisdom that came through the voice. And like you, Brian, like I was able to like get some of the message, and I would ask questions and I would get answers. Sometimes I'd get answers immediately, and sometimes I'd get answers later on in the day or later that week or at another point in time. And all of a sudden, like boom, the answer just comes in, and I'm like, oh wow. So for those of you out there who may be exploring this idea of, connecting with your inner child, connecting with your higher self, and not knowing who you may be connecting with, or if you're even connecting with them, these are some of the things that you might be able to use to help you understand, like who you're talking to
Yeah,
exactly.
I definitely struggle with that early on. Just the idea of having the conversations and asking questions, and you guys say, no, all you got to do is ask a question and you'll get it. And I just wasn't. I just wasn't. I don't have the tools yet, or I don't feel like I have the tools yet to see
No,
them.
I think you had the tools. I just don't think you remembered how to use them yet.
Oh,
Until
well,
now.
yeah, okay, potato to me. Yeah, you're right. But we all have the tools. You forget you have the tools. You misplaced the
Mm-hmm.
tools, and you have to find them. But even journaling, I've never ever once in my life put pen to paper for a self-improvement point of view. And that's, a part of this process. And I've, started journaling, and it's weird. And sometimes I'm writing, I don't know what I'm doing. But
Are you doing Dear Diary?
no, no. But I'm. It's interesting. It's going deeper. And yesterday, the last 2 days were most interesting. Yesterday, the conversation kind of ended with me thinking about, why do I think I'm a disappointment or a failure? And so then I ended it saying, I guess we're going to start, looking into that. And then today I just started thinking about my childhood, because this is the thing that's the hardest for me, because I really don't remember any negative things from my childhood. So I just started writing things down. It's like I remember this one when I was in high school. I one of my favorite. I was an athlete. I was in all the sports, but I wasn't the best. Well, except in the speed races, I was really good. But like, I was the only high jumper in high school, and it doesn't mean I was the best high jumper. It just means I was the only one that raised my hand and said, "I'll do that." And when I think back on it, I wasn't that great. I didn't win anything. I was okay at basketball, but I wasn't great. So I was a bench warmer. And I remember one time in high school, playing in a game. It was a home game, and the guy that I was in, one of the other bench warmers, his name's Kevin. We were both in there, and we trapped the other team, the guy with the ball. We trapped him. And all the other players didn't realize that we were trapping this guy, and they ran down to the other end of the floor. It was their possession, and I ended up stealing the ball from this guy right under the basket. So I just shot it in the basket. Well, it was their basket. It was the wrong basket. So I scored for the other team, and how embarrassing. And I really don't remember like the gym erupting in laughter or anything, or but I think back on that, and the disappointment, because I love basketball and I know the rules of the disappointment that I feel. So, so I started writing those things, and I was just trying to write down, as like, is there something earlier? So I was just literally this morning writing down, like, okay, this is where I lived, and, just trying to force myself to remember I lived on this block, and this is what the house looked like. And I'm just going to try to write in the journal the things that I actually remember, to try to see if there are other things that it triggers.
And you're totally opening the door. There's willingness now there. You're willing to look. So things
Which is
will
huge.
Yeah, it's huge. And that's all we have to do, is have a little bit of willingness and be open and have awareness, and your higher self will guide you. Your inner child will guide you. Your ego will try to sabotage you, and it will be brought to your attention. And you can ask yourself, just for the audience too, when you're doing these types of exercises, in Brian's case, the humiliation, he must have, I would imagine the feeling was humiliation. When else did I feel humiliated? And asking yourself, lead me to those things. Like, where was there an earlier time in my childhood that I also felt humiliated? And it could have been something as simple as doing something for your dad, and he asked you to get him a wrench, and you brought him a screwdriver, and what are you, an idiot? That's a screwdriver, not a wrench. And maybe you felt humiliated, and that could have happened to you at the age of 5 or 6 or 7. But those things have such an impact on us, and we don't remember them, we don't realize them, but that trauma gets trapped inside of us. It's pushed down, and then it resurfaces.
Right, and
And
I think that's the next evolution for me when I look at it, because I still struggle with, when you guys talk about that, about how, these traumatic events is that they may be there, and I struggle with seeing them, because it's like I don't see that as traumatic, and I realize, and I hear you guys.
here's why, and this is really helpful, and that's actually really good that you brought that up, Brian. Remember that when you're a child, or any small child, whether they're 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, their version of what the world is, when something like that happens, it feels like the end of the world. It feels like they've done the world wrong. It's not the same perspective that you have as an adult.
Right, and that's what I'm struggling with. I'm looking back at this with my adult brain, and I'm
Right.
not seeing that as traumatic, and that's why I said this is my next big struggle.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important for everyone to realize that when you're working with your inner child, like when we talk about these traumas, they may seem small to you from the adult perspective, but from the child's perspective, like it's really big. It's really big, because as a child, your world is a lot smaller. So when something small from the adult's perspective happens, it's actually quite magnified in the perspective of the child. And we have to remember that. And so going in with the compassion of understanding it from the perspective of the child is really important, and understanding how that may have traumatized you. Traumatized, we take that word and we make it like this massive thing. And so sometimes it can, it may trigger someone, or it may not resonate, but just remember that everything that happens to us, it gets imprinted on us as however small or big it seems, it's there, and it's worthy of taking a look at.
And trauma could be something so simple as, your brother got the red cup and you got the blue cup, and you associated the red cup as, the better cup. So mom must love your brother more because he gets the red cup every morning. Or it can be something so simple when you look back at, you look at children in your world now and see how they react, a 2, 3, 4-year-old to some of the smallest things. That kind of gives you perspective on what you're dealing with when you're talking to your inner child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I actually just took on a babysitting job of a 3-year-old. I put a post out in my neighborhood asking if anyone needed help, because I really have been feeling this calling to wanting to be around. Actually, 3 was the age that I thought of. And this lady showed up with he's going to turn 3 in a couple of weeks, this adorable little boy. And I'm really excited because I feel like it's going to help me connect with my inner child more, and give me some practice with conscious parenting and just awareness of seeing things through this child's eyes. Because, my kids are in their mid to late 20s. So it's been a really long time since I've been around small children on a regular basis. So I'm really excited to do this for it's more for myself, I think it's going to help me.
Yeah. I mean, being around my niece and nephew, Nora and Evan, really opens me up. It really allows me to kind of remember that sweet and tender, energy of a child, and helps me connect with my own. So I totally understand why this is something you're feeling called to do. And I think being around children in general really connects all of us back to that place. The remembering the innocence, and remembering the sweetness, and remembering, the purity of ourselves, that love. And we lose it along the way through all of these different experiences, and the way the world molds us into the way it wants us to be. And we have to break that mold and kind of start off at 0 point again.
I think it also helps to remind you of how compassionate you need to be with yourself, with, praising the little things. A child does something like, makes it to the potty without peeing themselves. And it's like, oh, wow, what a great job,
That's a big deal for me.
And just how we just don't praise ourselves for the little things that we do anymore as we, start to get older, and we just have less compassion with our own self-talk. That's something I've really noticed as I've honed in and working with my inner child more. Is I hear my thoughts and I stop sometimes in my tracks, and I'm like, wow, that wasn't nice. Like, that was not a compassionate way to talk to yourself. You should be more gentle and, and more like pumping yourself up and like, okay, yeah, you didn't get it that time. Let's do it again. Let's just try it again. Like, how would you be with a child? You wouldn't be humiliating them or making them feel horrible because they didn't get it on the first or second try. It's just like, that's okay. Let's try again. Let's do it again. And so I think the more I work with my inner child, the more I find I'm compassionate of myself and others. And that's one change I think I've seen in Brian too, is he's has more awareness of the people around him than he did before, as I see him starting to work with himself more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, you change the inner dialogue and the inner interaction that you do with yourself, and that's bound to get reflected into how you interact with your outside world. It's almost impossible for it not to happen. And that's like what's amazing. That's how you really see the changes in other people when they start really working on themselves and applying everything they're learning to themselves. And it's just a natural thing. You don't even have to try. It just becomes a thing. It was interesting to have my parents here over the holidays. And, my dad triggered me a little here and there, annoyed me from time to time because he tends to ask, in my opinion, sometimes like really obvious answered questions, or he asks the same questions over and over again. Like, I'm pretty sure I just answered that 3 hours ago.
I get in trouble for that, for not being compassionate with my dad who cannot remember anything.
Yeah, that's why it's like, your dad and my dad, they're
very similar.
Very similar.
I saw it. Yeah.
But it was really nice to have them here, and I know Christmas Eve we brought them on the video, on my live video where Lisa got to choose my 4th winner of my alchemy program, and I actually, because I had to like do all this social media stuff, I didn't hear the conversation that you guys were having with my parents about their perspective on me and what I'm doing right now. And I know, like, for some reason, I'm actually getting more comments on that video that I did a year ago. I think it was a year ago, if not 2 years ago, of me kind of sharing about how my father has just become really supportive of who I am and what I'm doing, all my work, even though he may not understand it all, he's become really supportive. And I've had a lot of people commenting on that video saying that, they're really struggling. Like over the holidays, I think it becomes a lot more apparent of the issues that you have with your family, because we tend to spend more time with our family over the holidays. And it's not always, like Lisa, you did a video on this, how it's not always the nicest time of the year. Mm-hmm. And, it's just, for me, it was just a really nice time to spend with my parents, despite, the odd annoyance here or there. Overall, like, it was really, really nice to spend time with my parents and create more memories and just spend time with them that I don't know how much longer we have here on this planet together,
Speaking of that, that's the future. What's the future look like?
What do you mean?
I mean, 2020. We've talked a lot about what's even the recent past, but the last year. What are you looking forward to in 2020? Nicole?
Well, I'm looking forward to a lot of things being revealed personally and collectively. I feel like 2020 is going to be an explosive year for many of us on a personal level and
That
on a
word?
collective level.
That's an interesting word.
What?
Explosive.
Mm. Yeah, I think there's going to be some eruptions. I think there's going to be some explosive things happening, things that, I feel like 2019 was about laying a lot of strong foundation, a lot of doing a lot of the digging, doing a lot of the groundwork, and, uprooting a lot of things so that you can lay a strong foundation in place for this upcoming year, where I feel like a lot of things are going to be revealed to us that I think many of us may not even be even aware is going to come out. And, I like, for me, something was just revealed to me yesterday, and it's something that I didn't even know was part of my past because I had repressed it so much. And that's coming through. And, dealing with that, I think, is on a similar level to where I think what a lot of people are going to be dealing with. And I say that because, through one of the 12/12 portal, the full moon that we just had, I had the message come through that 2020 is going to be the year that we see the world through children's eyes, and that the children are going to be very important. And I got that sense that it's going to be for the entire decade. Like, there's going to be a threaded theme through the 20s of that. And this inner child work that's happening or being spoken about a lot more, like, you're seeing it come out in a lot of the other YouTube channels that we watch, a lot of other people that we respect, people we have on our podcast. It's something that a lot of people are starting to talk about, and it's work that's becoming more and more common and being brought into the more collective awareness. And, I said this in the video that I feel like the root of all evil on this planet is stemmed in child sex trafficking and pedophilia. And, on a more horrific level, like the satanic ritual abuse that, we've had people on our podcast talk about that they've experienced. And I personally know people in my life who've experienced it. And this idea of where it's so hard to even imagine that stuff is happening, it's time for it to come to the surface, and we have to deal with it. There's no more hiding that. And I feel like once that gets uprooted, and I feel like that's actually going to be something that comes more and more to the forefront for this year, 2020 in particular. But again, I think it's going to be a major theme for the 20s in revealing that, because we can't be doing all this inner child work personally and not see that reflected collectively. And there's a crying out from the children within us all and the children here on this planet to be healed. And everything we do for ourselves is also helping to assist in the collective healing of those children. And it helps to spur and initiate more healing within others as we do our own work. And so for me, like, I'm really looking forward to that all kind of coming out and people really starting to become more aware and allow that reality to settle in so we can finally heal it and release that pain.
Talking about that just made me think of how simple this, this cliche type thing is said that, if you want to see change in the world, it starts with you. You have to be the change that you want to see in the world.
Mahatma Gandhi.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true. If you want to see change when it comes to pedophilia and treating children poorly and, all that, the best thing that you can do is to look at your own inner child and start treating your own inner child with love and respect and compassion and care and all the things that we've spoken about. And if everybody just turned inward to their own inner child, just on an energetic level, how that could just shift the planet in ways that you just can't even imagine. Like, you don't have to fix the problem in the problem. Like, the problem will somehow resolve itself if we all do the work at the root of the problem, which is our own inner children.
This is just me thinking. I don't think you even have to get to the inner child. A modicum of inward looking, a modicum of looking at yourself and pausing for reflection is going to do something, is going to change, is going to cause a shift.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah.
why this book and this practice that you've been doing, Brian, which I'm doing with him. I think it's great. And I think I have you can do your own thing. Like in these 6 things, the 10 minutes that you spend on each thing, they can be whatever you choose for them to be. They don't have to be, the 6 that Brian listed. And I think I do them a little differently than Brian. Like I'm doing the breath of life for 10 minutes of one of those. And for the affirmations, I do more mirror work, and you could do whatever it is that you want to give yourself as a gift. It could be speaking to your inner child or something like that, but just taking the time every day, or just for simple self-reflection, or just, journaling is a great way to do that, but you can do it in your own way. But just give a gift to yourself each day of something. Give yourself something, some sort of awareness, some sort of self-reflection, some sort of personal development.
You know what else I feel is coming in for 2020? That I feel like a lot of you listening to this right now, of our listeners, but people who are starting to open up to this idea of, self-awareness and self-growth and personal development and all of that, but also I feel like the intuitive abilities of people are going to be coming on a lot stronger in 2020. I feel like people who are already receiving downloads are going to experience those downloads in quicker succession. I also feel that those who haven't yet or understand what that is are going to experience that in 2020. Like I feel like there's going to be an uptick or an increase in that. And I say that because, it's interesting. The government, when you think back to the 60s and the 70s, especially during the Cold War, where the government was putting a lot of money into mind reading or remote viewing. We've had a couple of guests on talking about that because they believe that the Soviet was, creating all this. And so the government was using people who were having like these abilities to remote view or have telepathic abilities. And they, in 1996, 2 Italian scientists discovered the ability of cells in the brain to read minds. So it became an actual scientific evidence where they were able to map out the brain activity of 2 minds thinking the exact same thing, and they were moving the exact same patterns. And so there's this new technology that's really kind of coming out right now. And, Elon Musk is working on it and trying to invest in this idea of like being able to read our minds. And they're going to use it in a way that we're able to use technology just from like our minds being read. And, obviously that can be very scary. It can infringe upon our own privacy, personal privacy. And I know that there's certain countries like Chile that is now working to enact a privacy law to protect the human rights of your own mind privacy.
Really?
And and so this, this stuff doesn't come in unless we're collectively expanding and progressing and evolving to be able to have more abilities with our mind. And so I feel like if technology is already preparing for that, that tells me that the collective is becoming a lot more aware of their own intuitive abilities, and they're coming online a lot more. And people are starting to really wake up to that, things aren't as black and white as we've been told and programmed to believe, and people's intuition is turning on, and they're realizing that they have access to information that goes beyond space and time, and they just start knowing things. They don't know how they know things. And so like this is being shown in ways that I feel like 2020, a lot of you out there who are listening to this, you're going to be experiencing a lot of increases in your abilities psychically, intuitively, all of that. So that's kind of coming in for me.
And from what I understand, the inner child is the one that holds the key to all of these gifts. So it makes perfect sense that, 2020 is also the year of the inner child, and having this happen at the same time. The more we focus on the inner child and go in, the more your inner child feels safe to reconnect you with those gifts that you innately had at birth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just from me finding out the information that I found out yesterday, which I will talk about in some upcoming videos, I'm just processing it right now. But I've noticed that I'm starting to get a lot more messaging coming in. Like I'm feeling a lot of channeled information coming through just in the last 24 hours. And it's spurring a lot of creativity and things that I want to share with all of you through my YouTube channel. And so, this idea when Rebecca was on and we talked about the inner child and how when we start to connect with that part of us, which was always intuitive when we came into this world, we were always intuitive. It just gets shut down as we get older. That all of those gifts start coming in as we allow that to surface within us. All of those other abilities that have been kind of turned off or cut off, blocked, become unblocked and are now accessible. So the more you access within yourself, the more you access these intuitive abilities. And the inner child is like your direct line into that. So yeah.
Wow.
All good stuff.
So that's what I think. Yeah, that's what I think for 2020. What about you guys? Do you have anything you're looking forward to for 2020?
To be honest, I haven't thought about 2020. And in saying that right now, I'm glad that I haven't thought about 2020 because I think just who I am, the one thing that I've always been really good at for whatever reason, I don't know why this is a part of who I am, but I live in the now and I don't live in the past. I try not to live in the past. Sometimes when and it's, especially lately after, working with you guys so much, if any past memory comes into my mind, I'm just like, leave me alone. Just shut it down. I don't want to deal with it. It's not, it's now, I
You're
try
not
to
letting
be
the past dictate your future.
right. I try to just stay in the now. And to do that, that's also not thinking about the future. And it's not that I'm not, don't have goals or aspirations, but I seriously don't have any idea what 2020 holds or what I want it to hold. And maybe I should. I don't know if that's good or
I don't
bad.
think you should. I don't think you should or shouldn't. Like, you're just doing what you're doing. And I think that's perfect. I think you just got to keep following that.
I just know it's going to be another year for me where I'm determined to step into my greatness, and become the greatest version of myself, whatever that looks like. I'm a better version of myself here at the end of 2019 than I was at the end of 2018. A lot more awareness has come into my mind, and I see things a lot differently than I did. I'm focused a lot more on myself and my own wants and needs, and I'm starting to recognize some of the programs that have been holding me back and self-sabotaging, and I'm just know that I'm going to continue down this road with even more relentlessness to that, and that with that great things will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever they may be.
Whatever they may be. Well, it's been a great year of ups and downs, highs and lows. All good stuff. Even the bad stuff. It's all been good.
No regrets.
And no regrets at all. I can actually say that for 2019, which I think is a really great thing. Yeah, it's been a big year of learning.
It really has. It's been a landslide.
It's been a great week of learning for me.
It's been a good fourth quarter for you.
He can't
better late than never, huh?
You're the exact opposite of the Broncos. You showed up in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Burn. Dang, sorry, Broncos.
True.
Well, thanks to both of you for being such huge rocks in my life. This has been a very trying year, very emotional year, and I don't know what I would have done without you guys next to me to lean on and, taking me to the gun range when I need to shoot shit.
Mwah. Anytime.
It's been rough. It's been a rough year.
It's been
For me, it was a very emotional year. I mean, I thought I had worked on a lot of deep old stuff, and I found just new layers just buried down in there that just kept resurfacing. I've done more crying this year than I think I've ever done.
You know what else has layers?
What?
Parfaits. Who you ever meet? You say, hey, you want to go get some parfaits? They say, no, I don't like parfaits. Everybody loves parfait.
Good to know.
You've done that before on this show, haven't
I have
you?
indeed.
Or has it?
I do that almost any
like,
time somebody says the word layers. Except one time, I think I might have been drinking. I shat the bed and
You said
forgot.
tiramisu.
I said tiramisu.
So goes,
well, tiramisu also has layers.
And I was like, tiramisu? Did you forget it's parfait? And he was like, oh my gosh, how did that happen?
Oh gosh.
Shrek.
That's from Shrek. Donkey says that. Yes.
Thanks to all of our listeners for being here with us. This is going to be a very interesting year. Just kicking off January 2020. For those of you interested, we have a huge astrological event happening on the 12th of January. It is the Saturn and Pluto conjunction. I even had one of my old clients from Cayman, who is just not into this stuff at all, send me an article on it. He's like, did you know this was happening? And I'm like, well, yes, I did. And then I'm like, I'm surprised you are bringing it into your awareness. And so it's funny. He's trying to connect with me through this realm. And I think that's amazing. But there's a huge astrological event, which only happens usually once. I shouldn't say usually once in your lifetime. It can happen twice in a lifetime, but it's usually around every 35-ish years or so. And we actually have our live alchemy call on that day. Wow. On that night. So for those of you who are part of the alchemy program, it's going to be a good night. I'm going to have some extra stuff prepared for you. And if you're interested in joining, just head on over to my website to join in. It's going to be a really good year. And I'm excited because I found a new website to get all my meditation music from. And I am just feeling like a kid in a candy store going through all this music. I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to make all of these meditations. So it's going to be a great year. Thank you to all of our listeners who've joined us from the beginning. And for those of you who've just joined us, thanks for being part of this journey. And we hope that 2020, we're able to bring you more insight, more wisdom, and more experiences for you guys to draw upon and apply to your own lives. Thanks for being part of it all. And we love you guys. Happy New Year. We'll be back with you again next week.
Go Tigers!
Thank you all for joining our show. We appreciate you tuning in and supporting us. If you have any questions you would like answered on the show or any guests you would like to hear on our show, please email that information to us at info@enlightenup.us. And please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you're interested in contacting Nicole or myself for some coaching or any of the other services we provide, you can find out more about Nicole at inflexibleme.com, and my website is lisaloveslove.com. Thank you again for joining us and supporting our show, and we will be back with you all next week.